This is one of a series of interviews being conducted of senior members of the Shreveport Bar for the purpose of recording and preserving some of the history, the color, and the flavor of the practice of law in Shreveport over past years. This is a special project of the Archives Committee of the Shreveport Bar Association during celebration of the bicentennial year of the United States Constitution. Our special guest during this segment of the series is Mr. Robert Roberts, Jr., senior partner of the Shreveport law firm of Blanchard, Walker, O'Quinn, and Roberts. Mr. Roberts, a native of Mendon, is a distinguished and highly esteemed member of the Shreveport Bar, having actively pursued the practice of law in Shreveport for more than 60 years. At 83, going on 84 years of age, he's the senior-most member of the Shreveport Bar. I'm Joe Milner. I'm an attorney in Shreveport, and just coincidentally, am a member of the same law firm as Mr. Roberts. And I've been assigned the rather pleasurable task by the Archives Committee of the Shreveport Bar Association to chat and visit with Mr. Roberts during this special interview. Mr. Roberts, I want to, of course, convey to you the appreciation of the Shreveport Bar Association for arranging to be here today and to share with us, as well as countless others who will have an opportunity of viewing this recorded interview in years to come, of some of the history and the color of the practice of law over the past 60 years. And I suppose that by way of getting started and covering some of your personal background, I might ask you when and where you were born.
Well, Joe, I much appreciate the opportunity to leave some mementos for the other members of the bar, and especially for my partner and for you. I was born in Mendon in September 1903, the son of Robert Roberts and his wife, Olive Goodwill. Incidentally, I was born in the house my mother grew up in and had lived all of her life in until they moved to Bossier City in 1924, I believe it was.
I see. Was your father in the legal profession, Mr. Roberts?
My father, at the time I graduated from law school in 1925, recently had been a judge of the district court of the district, which at that time included Bossier Parish, Webster, and Bienville parishes.
And then at or about that time, I believe that with the adoption of the Louisiana Constitution in 1921, they changed the composition and makeup of the
a rather complicated
district.
Change took place. Of course, it was anticipated because it was set up by the new Constitution, of 1921. They changed Bossier and annexed it to the district, which at that time was comprised only of Caddo. And they left Webster and added the other district in this northwest Louisiana was Bossier, Webster, and Bienville. In other words, they supplanted 4 judges with 3, it was 5 maybe with, anyway, they left him to where he could not run for re-election in Bossier, except against the 3 sitting Caddo judges, and they defeated him in the next election.
I see.
So he was off of the court at the very time I got out of law school in 25.
And of course, in subsequent years, by constitutional amendment, Bossier was put back in with Webster, I believe.
That's correct. A few years later, and very few years later, the by constitutional amendment, the districts were rearranged so that Bossier became a part of the same district with Webster and Bienville. And I believe Caddo continued by itself as a district.
Where'd you do your undergraduate work in college, Mr. Roberts?
Well, after graduating from high school in 1919, I went to LSU in Baton Rouge for 6 years and got a BA degree in, that would be 1923, I believe.
Yes, sir. And I assume you went to law school at LSU
and
as
I
well.
went to law school at LSU and graduated in 25.
Approximately how many students were in your graduating class at
About
LSU?
20. I can't remember exactly. And unfortunately, of course, everybody had a gumbo, an annual, and I had one, and everybody loans it to somebody and forgets who's got it.
That's terrible. So you no
So
longer
I don't
I see.
have an exact count on it.
And I believe, Mr. Roberts, you were valedictorian of your class
I
in law
was,
school.
yeah.
And what would you estimate the size of the student body in law school back during the early 20s?
75 maybe. My class was about 18 or 20.
Were there any young ladies in your law school class?
2 started in my law school class. Miss Amelie Prescott, who later won the title of Most Beautiful Co-ed. So she had more than one talent,
I see.
law and beauty.
Did she graduate with
She
you?
graduated with me later, 3 years later.
Where did she practice law after she
She
graduated?
married a man named Rodney Woods, who lived at Lutcher, Louisiana, and I think she went through a sort of a desultory law practice during that time. Anyway, she was a practicing lawyer and died within the last year or two.
I see. Did the other young lady who started law
The
school
other
with
young
you-
lady was, unfortunately, got herself in wrong with Dean Robert Lee Tillis, which was fatal to any law school career. She got out of our class within, 2 months.
You had mentioned to me, I believe, in that context, Mr. Roberts, a story about Dean Tullis, of course, whose name is synonymous with legal education in
In
Louisiana
Louisiana,
involving
right.
this young lady. Would you relate that? It's a matter of interest.
Dean Tullis was known to have the faculty of coming right back to the same person time after time and asking them questions. There didn't have to be but 2 or 3 people in his class because they got all the questions. And she, unfortunately, turned out to be one of them. And the first case that was printed in the case book was called Rich against the New York Central Railroad. And it involved a rather complicated quarrel between Rich and the railroad company over the location of the Grand Central Station in New York City. And Dean Tullis picked out this young lady, who incidentally was a graduate of one of the Virginia women's colleges of good repute. He said, Miss So-and-so, he said, this case in the case book of Rich against New York Central, wasn't that a case where Mr. and Ms. Rich were traveling by buggy down the highway alongside the railroad? And she said, yes, sir. And that was the last of that lady in law school.
I think, Mr. Roberts, we all can recall, probably much to our embarrassment and chagrin, being led down the primrose path in class recitation by such
It
mental
was
giants
unfortunate
as-
that it happened to be one that he had already picked out to ask a lot of questions to. She didn't last but a few months, a month or two.
Of course, having that experience from time to time, it was part of the learning experience.
Part of the-
and was
And of course,
very
Dean
effective.
Tullis didn't spend his time trapping or fooling his students. He was a wonderful teacher, not because he knew all the certainly he didn't know all the answers, but he did not, I mean, he just was a man of intellect and force and made an impression on the serious students in his class that was lasting, no doubt about it.
He was a teacher as well as an
Teacher,
administrator.
yeah.
But, he was, how many years was he dean of the law school, would you estimate?
He was dean when I graduated, and I really don't remember when he died or when he, I'm sure he didn't quit. They may have made him quit, but he was a maverick, as all of those people are. Anyway, he lasted longer than I did.
When you finished law school, were you required at that time, Mr. Roberts, to take a bar exam as to get a license to practice law?
Up until that very year, graduates of Louisiana Law School, and there were three of them, Tulane, LSU, and
Probably Loyola.
Loyola. If you had a degree from any of those three, you were admitted on motion. In other words, you didn't have to take a bar examination. But there was dissatisfaction with that method of admission. And the legislature passed a statute that required everybody, including graduates of LSU, Loyola, and Tulane, to take a bar examination, and I did take one at that time.
Could one qualify to take the bar exam at that time without having attended law school or otherwise getting a law degree?
No, but it made it easier to do. I mean, if you got together a bunch of affidavits and by responsible lawyers in Louisiana that you had studied systematically Louisiana law, you could get and many people were qualified in that way as Louisiana lawyers. But this statute I'm speaking of, adopted in 24 or 25, the first year you had to take an exam was 1925.
Right. Where was the law school building located at LSU during the years you
people
were there?
wouldn't, if you saw it now, you would hardly admit it was a building. It was a shack, frame shack on the old LSU campus.
Where was the old LSU campus?
The old LSU campus was there where the state capitol building is now, and this frame building I'm speaking of, where the law school was conducted, was right straight in front of that place where the capitol is now. I'd say maybe 300 yards.
Did you study with anybody in preparation of taking this bar examination?
Of course, it threw a swivet into all of youngsters that were going to take the bar examination. And so far as I was concerned, I had a couple of, 3 or 4 buddies that I knew were good students, and we teamed up to study together. And it was Victor Saxey, who's now deceased, John Fredge, deceased, Purcell Wallace, who practiced law a long time in Shreveport and is now deceased, and myself. And occasionally, this lady, Amalie Prescott, on the basis at least of her beauty, was admitted to our study group.
I see. And then, after you took your bar exam, where did you commence your practice of law?
You were sworn in New Orleans, and I came home and joined my father, who at that time was in the interval between terms as a judge, who had a law office in what we called then the City Bank building. And later it was called the Sklar building, I believe.
That's a building, I believe, that's since
It's
been
now been,
demolished.
well,
and,
recently been demolished and owned by the Commercial National Bank and
Bank parking garage
Bank
now, I
Parking
think.
Garage now, I believe.
And so you went in essentially into a father-son partnership
right.
and practice of law for a temporary period of
And then
time.
it was not very long, maybe a year and a half, that they revamped the districts, the judicial districts, that is, and he was elected to a judge where he continued.
And how many judges then did you have that
We
time
had
on your father's
3
election?
before, and after my father's election, there were 4.
Mr. Roberts, in the old building that we were talking about that you referred to as the City Bank building, didn't that also house the offices of Huey Long during the time?
During the
that he
time I was in
practicing
that
law?
building, Huey Long and also his brother Julius were in that building.
Were they associated
They were not
together?
associated at the time I knew them. They had been off and on, and Julius used to complain about how Huey had taken away his clientele.
Did he explain how that was accomplished, Mr. Roberts?
Well, this is gossip, and maybe it ought not to be put on the record, but Julius claimed that he had an office right in front of the elevator. Of course, it would have his name on it. And that Huey wasn't happy until he got Julius out of that office and down the hall, and then he started getting Julius's clients.
I see.
But their practice was largely workman's compensation cases, which were handled at that time mainly by lawyers, and damage suits, personal injury.
Did you have occasion to have any cases with either one of them, Mr. Roberts?
I
when you were
don't remember
practicing
that I
law?
did, but that doesn't mean I didn't. You would almost always have some contact one way or the other through succession,
I see.
whatever. I mean, with other lawyers in town. They weren't that many at that time.
After Huey Long's assumption to the governorship, did his brother Julius continue to practice in Shreveport?
As long as he lived, and I can't remember how long that was, Joe. Just don't remember.
I seem to
But
recall.
I knew him well, and I knew Huey well. That is, as well as people knew Huey.
I believe also you mentioned to me sometime in the past, Mr. Roberts, that Huey Long had something to do with a campaign that your father ran for the Court of Appeals.
But that was the first time my father knew him, or the first time I knew him. That was evidently in 1922 or 3 or something like that. I don't remember.
That was during a campaign that your
That was
father had
during a
mounted for a
campaign.
position on
That's
the,
right.
I guess, the Second Circuit Court of
It
Appeal
was.
in Shreveport. Well, tell us something about the kind of cases you took on, Mr. Roberts, as a
I took
fledgling
everything
lawyer.
everybody asked me to if it was honest, or if I thought it was.
Your practice was essentially diversified, as
That's right,
they
it really
say.
was.
And, did you have any criminal law practice during those early years?
Well, yeah, but not of any consequence. You couldn't help having criminal practice because you got appointed by the court to defend people that didn't have a lawyer.
Well, the courts then had a system of procedure for appointing lawyers for indigent defendants.
Right.
But was that appointment made without compensation?
Yes, you didn't. There wasn't any arrangement for compensation. It was just a public service you had to perform.
I see. Well, how did a practicing attorney back during those days, Mr. Roberts, determine or formulate the amount of his fee in handling a case after the
Well, he
matter
got
had
the
been
most
concluded?
he thought he could and get by with it. I mean, I don't mean to be. They geared it roughly in their own minds anyway, to the value of the service and the time it took. It was purely a subjective
Was
fee
there
fixing.
any notion or practice back at that time, which I think is probably more prevalent today, of of handling it on a more objective basis by time or hour.
Well, there was talk about it more than it actually took place, Joe, I think is the truth.
I see.
And I think that may be true right on up to the present time.
Do you recall whether the state or the local bar association had any effect at that time?
I believe they had a
schedule?
suggested, there were certain routine things, for example, a divorce. And I'm about to make a statement that I couldn't back up. If it was for black people, it was $25 to get them a divorce. Now, I mean,
I don't believe there'd be too many people around to controvert what you're going to say happened back in 1925, so I think you're relatively safe in drawing on your recollection, Mr. Roberts, in that regard. And how long did you practice with your father before he went back on the bench?
I would say a couple of years, year and a half.
And,
I did not have any place to check my dates without going over and demanding from the clerk of court that he pull out his record books, and I didn't do it. So I can't give you the exact dates.
How long did your father continue serving?
Until his death, which was in 1930.
I see. Who were
Although I don't believe he was on the court at the time of his death, but he shortly before had been.
Who were the other sitting judges at that time? You mentioned there were 4, inclusive of your father.
There was Fletcher Bell, whose father, incidentally, was a judge of the same court, or had been, rather, and Judge Ed Mills and J.H. Stevens. I think Judge Stevens has a son who practices law in Shreveport still, doesn't he?
Is that Hugh Stevens?
I believe so.
I'm acquainted
I've
with Hugh
lost,
Stevens, but I'm not sure whether that
I've
was his
lost touch
father
with
or
him,
not.
though.
I see. Well, Mr. Roberts, how would you assess the quality of the bench at that time, composed of these individuals whom you've just identified?
You and I have decided, or I have, that to the best of my knowledge, there were at that time about 125 lawyers in Shreveport upward. And I can remember first-class lawyers, and I can remember miserable-class lawyers in that bunch. I think that's routine. I think you're going to get that many people, lawyers or whatnot, and there'll be some good ones and some bum ones.
Well, how did you assess the jurists that you had hearing your cases? That is, the judges, the quality of the bench that you had at that time.
Well, they did their best, and I think that's all you can ask of a judge. I have no complaint as to my recollection of those judges.
Well, after your father went on the bench, did you have any kind of partnership or office-sharing arrangement with any other attorneys as you continued in your practice of law?
No, I didn't make another partnership. Well, I did, too. I had a partnership that lasted until he went to work for the Texas Eastern Company with a man named George Nath. And Nath, a little later, he quit me to become president of Texas Eastern Gas Company. But that wasn't for a relatively short time, because he was on his way to bigger things than a young lawyer partnership. And I don't want to say anything that George Nath was one of my best friends and continued to be so. But our partnership just didn't last very long on account of circumstances.
Yes, sir.
And other than that, I had office sharing arrangements, well, for example, with Malcolm Feist, where we would split the expenses of running the office, and at least one other.
Let's see, I think at some time in your practice, because I know he later came into our firm after he retired from one of the oil companies, Ford Courier.
Ford Courier was another one, that I had an office sharing arrangement with. Of course, he's deceased now.
And Mr. Feist is too, I believe.
Feist is.
Did he become a rather prominent member of the bar, Mr. Feist?
He did, I would say.
As a matter of fact, he was president
He
of
was
the Shreveport
president of the
Bar
Bar
Association one year, I
right.
believe, since I've been practicing law. The time you began practicing, Mr. Roberts, in 1925, had the present Caddo Parish Courthouse building been constructed?
No, it had not. When I got out of law school in the early summer of 1925, they were still occupying the old courthouse, which was a red brick building exactly where the present courthouse is. But it was that same year, I think, that they demolished the old courthouse and started on the new one. But in any event, it was right at that time.
Where did they conduct court during a period of time the old
Now,
building was down?
this surprises everybody that I've told about it, but it's a fact. The three judges had their offices on the top floor, 10th floor, I believe it was, of the Giddens Lane building, and they had courtrooms there where civil court was held on the top floor of the Giddens Lane building. So far as the criminal part of the district court's job was concerned, they had a courtroom. I mean, the Bar Association, or the parish, I guess, had rented an entire building up on Common Street. And in your notes there, you have it misplaced just a little bit.
I'm not surprised. Where was it exactly?
It was facing in the same direction as the Methodist Church. And it was about 2 blocks or 2 lots, or 3 maybe, in the direction of South Highlands, that on Common Street.
I see.
And facing the river, just like the Methodist Church faces the river.
I see.
And in that building, they had the clerk's office, which was a busy place, of course, as it always is.
This was the clerk court
Clerk
of the parish.
Court of Caddo Parish. And they had the district attorney, and they had a courtroom for the trial of criminal cases. And that's where the criminal cases were tried.
I see. Mr. Roberts, I wonder if you'd share with us something about the day-to-day practice of law during those early years. For example, what procedure did a lawyer go through by way of getting his case or cases set for trial?
Oh, you're talking about the actual nuts and bolts of practicing law.
Yes, sir.
The court, the civil court, had 2 motion hours a day. I don't know exactly how they do it now, but it's substantially the same, I guess. And if you didn't go to that motion hour, it was on Wednesday morning and again on Saturday morning.
You had a Saturday morning
We
court
had a
session.
Saturday morning session of court, and you almost, if you had any cases that you hoped to get tried anytime soon, you had to be present and put in your a slip to set your case, and then battle with somebody else for the only available space, perhaps. Anyway, you through in those motion hours, they set the docket for the following week, or maybe 2 weeks.
Was there any way to schedule your case simply by dropping a minute slip without
Well,
being
you
there?
dropped it in, but you didn't get any place unless you followed it up with having yourself or somebody. So you had to nominate a day after you had gone to motion hour to set your case.
What would a lawyer do if he was unable to attend motion hour but yet wanted to
He
schedule
would
a
get
case?
one of his friends to go for him, speak up for him.
Some of the attorneys customarily use this
Yeah.
practice. They would send a representative
Yeah,
there,
that's
and
right.
I believe you mentioned something about a Miss Carrie Keller. Who
There was
she
a
in
woman lawyer
contact?
here named Carrie Keller. I mean, she was a rather old maid, and, well, she was. I mean, the truth of it was, but she was very efficient as representative of Thigpen, Harrell, and Kuzan, who was one of the prominent law firms of that time, who comprised one of the prominent law firms of that time. And she was usually the one who spoke up for their interest at Motion House.
Was she a member of that firm or someone
She
they
was
just
not a
engaged
member of
on?
that firm. She had an office alongside of them and worked with them constantly. And she did attend to their motion hour practice.
Was Motion Hour back during that time, Mr. Roberts, regarded as somewhat of a meeting place and a social event for lawyers in Shreveport?
Yeah, of course it was. Anytime you would put maybe 30 people, 25 or 30, together like that, and the business of Motion Hour would be finished in 40 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour and a half. Everyone would get hold of their favorite friends and go get some coffee or something. I mean, it was a social event.
So a very large segment of the bar was either there or
There
represented.
were many motion hours, for example, that I went to that I didn't have the business at, but I went because I knew my friends were going to be there.
I see. How long did it take a lawyer to get his case scheduled for trial once say a lawsuit had been filed before you could?
I remember I told you this and you were astonished. Back at the time when there were 3 judges on our court, they got help from some judges, for example, at Lake Providence, temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And you were lucky if you got a case, unless you had a little bit of luck, like going to motion hour when somebody that otherwise would have preempted you.
Mm-hmm.
It could take easily over 2 years to get your case tried.
That really did surprise me, Mr. Roberts, because I thought that crowded dockets were a phenomenon of the present day because of a more litigious age and because of more lawyers, and that it would take upwards of 2 years to get your case scheduled.
Well, it does. It did. And if you had a place on there, you tried your best to protect it. There was a scheme that was used to, maybe unfairly. The judges sometimes would permit you, if you said you had witnesses coming from New York or whatever, to set a case 2 weeks in advance instead of 1 week. Mm-hmm. And that subsidiary to the rule was just the occasion for a good deal of cheating, to be perfectly frank about it.
Were there any cases tried back at that time during the summer months of the year?
Not by routine, Joe. I mean, if there was some special reason, and you could persuade the judge it was special. Incidentally, the case had by that time been assigned to a particular one of the 3 judges. And if you could persuade him that justice would be served by this summer trial, he might do it. But it wasn't any fun doing anything in the summertime in those days.
Days before air conditioning.
That was before air conditioning.
Okay. As I recall, Mr. Roberts, you left the private practice of law around 1934 to become a member of the legal staff of Arkansas Natural Gas Corporation.
I did.
Was that corporation headquartered here in Shreveport?
Yes.
So you continued to practice law in Shreveport as a member of that legal staff?
As a member of that, they had a legal department of about 5 or 6 people, 4 or 5. And Mr. Henry Walker was the moving spirit of that. Although he didn't work for him, he maintained his own law firm as he did until his death. But I worked for the company under his general direction for 2 or 3 years.
I see. Was Arkansas Natural Gas Corporation related in any way to Arkansas Louisiana Gas Company?
They were sister companies. They were owned by the same by City Service Company, actually. But they were both owned by City Service Company, so you didn't have to worry too much about contracts between them being unfair to one or the other.
Yes, sir. Approximately how many lawyers did you have on the legal staff of that corporation?
I would say four or five, maybe six.
And what type of work did you perform, Mr. Roberts, on the staff?
Everything. But there was a good deal of title examination, and there were a good deal of contracts in oil and gas production operations.
And rendering title opinions?
Title opinions.
How about involvement with litigation?
We tried lawsuits.
I seem to remember, Mr. Roberts, from time to time in doing legal research, seeing some appellate court cases where your name is linked with that with Mr. Henry Walker, where I assume that you jointly tried and briefed the case.
That's right, except that I might have done all the work. But he and I worked together constantly.
So basically, you were performing as a journeyman lawyer in all of these areas as a member of the legal staff of that corporation.
That's right.
And did you find your work there broadening professionally and helpful to you when you returned to the private practice of law later?
How do you get the answer to that question? I don't know whether it broadened me or narrowed me. But it was general. I mean, I did everything. I got some of the employees' divorces, for example.
Did you write wills, get involved in any state work?
You don't write many wills for Arkansas Natural Gas Corporation, but I had lots of friends there that didn't hesitate to call on me for what they wanted.
Then I believe, Mr. Roberts, after some years spent in work in that capacity, you joined our law firm in the early 1950s.
I did. That is correct.
And
did
what was
pretty much the same type of work, and to a considerable extent for the same people that I had previously done.
And what was the name of the law firm at that time?
Blanchard, Goldstein, Walker, and O'Quinn.
Who was the Blanchard in the law
Blanchard,
firm?
I never laid eyes on. He was deceased at the time I joined the firm.
I believe he had a colorful history, though.
He did. I think he'd been governor.
Didn't he serve in the United States Senate at one time?
Served in the Senate,
I believe,
yeah, I
and
think.
maybe as a judge.
But I didn't know him as a lawyer.
Who was the Goldstein in that firm?
Alias Goldstein. Most people that see the name will call it Elias, but anyway, E-L-I-A-S.
And is he deceased now?
He's long been deceased.
And how about the Walker in the firm?
That was Henry C. Walker, Jr.
With whom you worked when you worked
I
at the
worked
corporation?
closely with him, yeah.
And the O'Quinn?
There were two O'Quinns, Leon and Arthur. And Arthur was called Mickey. And they were, well, I believe Mickey had been married, but not for long. And Leon never married. But they were good lawyers.
Approximately how many lawyers were in the law firm when you joined in the
I'd
early 50s?
say 8 or 9.
And how many attorneys are in that law firm today?
30.
With
With
what
about
size?
50 support staff.
I see.
Stenographers, errand boys, whatnot.
Approximately when did the firm originate, the Blanchard Walker firm?
That could be a matter of debate because Blanchard, I think, and Goldstein were the first ones teamed up, or maybe not. But it depends on when you assign Blanchard to the firm. But at least in the early teens.
Early teens, okay. Mr. Roberts, before our interview began here today, you mentioned the names of at least 4 Shreveport attorneys whom you regarded as being particularly outstanding during your years of practice, and you mentioned the names of John Wilkinson, Sidney Harold, Henry Walker Jr., and Alias Goldstein. I wonder if you'd tell us what impressed you most about these gentlemen.
Well, now, I told you also that I wouldn't attempt to compare them to anybody else you might name among the Shreveport lawyers. But those men that I named had at least one attribute, I thought, and still think, that you can't get along as a first-class lawyer without, and that is the ability to pick out the important issue in a lawsuit. If you can't do that, then you're lost. But those four were preeminent, I thought. Anyway, they were extremely skillful in doing just that. And I could add some more to that list, too.
Well, Mr. Roberts, I have no doubt that reciprocally, if one polled the members of the Shreveport Bar who've been in the practice of law for some years, that without doubt your name would appear on their list of outstanding lawyers.
I don't know about that.
I really want to thank you again for participating and making a contribution in this special way to this project of the Archives Committee of the Shreveport Bar Association. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Joe, and I hope that what I have covered, I've covered well enough for your purposes.
You have indeed. Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
All right.